Want me to try headphones? I just
No, it worked, but did you hear that?
No. Well,
I
I heard something slam.
Yeah, I just dropped this fucking scented candle, and so I'm not gonna worry about it right now. But there's actually glass like all over the floor and shit. Well, fucking, here we go again. Mongochatter number 7. This time, this evening, Shawn Fenn, of Seattle, Washington, also of Newburyport, Massachusetts, just like me. How about that? Although
Yep.
I'm like the other way around, but
Go the other way.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's crazy, man.
Drag me kicking and screaming from the West Coast over here, but
How long's it been?
it'll be 6 years. July 2nd was the day that we landed. I had a job uh, in Seattle where if you worked any day in the month, that you got benefits for the whole month. So I worked July 1st and then got on a plane that night.
That's sick.
Landed. Yep.
Did you have already something lined up over here, like work wise?
Yeah. Not work wise. My wife is from the East Coast from a long time before, and she'd been in Seattle for a long time, and she wanted to move back here. Her family's back here, so we've been talking about it for a while, and I don't even know why, but finally one day I was just like, all right, fuck it, let's do it.
My mom kind of grew up in Seattle. Like she grew up on Long Island in New York, but then
Yeah.
my grandfather actually he was like a conceptual artist. He got hired by Boeing to just basically walk around Boeing Field and draw planes in like in the 60s or whatever.
Yep. Yep.
So my mom went to Bellevue High School back in the day, and
Okay.
she, like you said, like she came to visit me in Seattle in like 2010, and like when she was there, it was like she was like, dude, it was like a gas station. There was nothing in Bellevue. This is pre
Yeah.
Microsoft, whatever. But she always told me that like during that time in the 60s and 70s, there was this sense of everyone was leaving Seattle. Like she was like, yeah, everyone was like, the saying was,
Yeah.
the last person to leave Seattle, turn the lights off, or some shit
Yeah.
like that.
That was in the that was around Boeing, especially because Boeing, like when the gas crisis and there was all that stuff, like Boeing started laying off. Boeing was the only big manufacturer. I know this because my father ended up working at Boeing and my grandfather worked at Boeing. I mean, that was it. Like if you live, it's sort of like being in Detroit, like your whole family worked at GM, right?
Yeah,
Uh, and when the gas crunch, like planes didn't sell, and so Boeing just started laying off people like crazy. And yeah, and people were leaving at that time. When I was younger, it was Microsoft started taking off, right? Like Microsoft, and then there was a bunch of other companies. Starbucks, Amazon was much later, but Microsoft really just took over because they spawned a million companies that did business with Microsoft, and so this tech thing, Amazon, and now is like surpassed probably Microsoft's footprint there, but it
yeah,
was uh, it was a much smaller. It definitely was a much smaller kind of to grow up in. People still kind of knew each other,
yep,
and it was affordable. It was blue collar. Like I said, when I was growing up in Ballard, I mean, everybody knew everybody in the neighborhoods, and most of them were our neighbors were like a Albertsons grocery store manager and fishermen, shit like that, like a bunch of like Norwegians that had been there for however many years.
yeah. That's sick. That's old Ballard for sure, man.
Yeah.
It's still like
Definitely.
I know my time is like at wait. Obviously, I'm not an OG Seattleite, and like I lived there like at a certain time. But I will say just like a shout out to this certain neighborhood. Like there is like this. I'm sure there's many neighborhoods like this, but this neighborhood that I was a part of, I guess we're gonna call it Finney's Gulch. It's like six, like where the Tin
Not
Hat
quite
is,
Finney
and
Ridge.
yeah, like
Yeah.
65th and 8th Ave Northwest, kind
Yep.
of right there by the Goodwill and stuff. there's a bunch of small businesses and neighborhood folks that all know each other and fucking, you see the same folks in the neighborhood and stuff, and it's pretty working class and stuff like that. You know, for my time and place there, that was a really, I was proud to be a part of that neighborhood amongst neighborhoods in Seattle, I guess I'll say, fucking
Yep.
North Seattle pride, baby.
I was born in Ballard, and we lived on a houseboat on Lake Union. And then when my parents got divorced, we moved over. So when I graduated Bellevue High School,
Oh, no way.
Bellevue High Wolverines, moved over to the east side, and that's where I met a bunch of friends. And then when I graduated high school, I lived up on Capitol Hill for a while, lived on U District, out in the U District, a bunch of places, all over the place. Went to Seattle, graduated Seattle U, up on the hill, and then we moved back to the east side. My wife and I both got jobs on the east side, so that's where when we left, we were living in Kirkland, Yuppieville. And when we moved to the east side, I met this kid, and he could do hand plants, and I was like, fuck, like, you got to teach me that. And I had a bunch of baseball cards that he wanted, and I was like, you can have all my baseball cards, just teach me how to do hand plants, man.
That's amazing. Are we talking like street plant style or?
Yeah, it was like, it was like more like a freestyle street plant, like not just standing up and doing a sad plant or some ho-hos or something like that, but he'd actually be on the board. If you used to watch the old days like Per Wellander, Rodney Mullen, they'd actually be on the board and you'd grab like cradle style and then push yourself up.
Yeah.
So you'd be do like a little street plant. I don't even know what it's called, but it was definitely like a freestyle type.
It's like gymnastics almost. It's like upper body strength. Yeah, that's wild.
And then we built a rail out of PVC, like it must have been probably 8-inch PVC, and I just nailed 2x4s to the bottom, and I'd ride that down the driveway and learn board slides. Built a fly ramp, just a shitty fly ramp. I had no idea how I was doing it. Probably it fell apart like after a couple of weeks, but just all day I'd just go out alone and just try to learn shit.
Was there shit going on that you were looking to? Was it like Thrasher or Transworld, or was there like a scene around you, or what was kind of like keeping the stoke going, would you say?
It was just people, right? So there was Fallout Records and skateboards. It was like the place to go. Even though I was on the east side, I knew that was the place to go. I'd just hop the bus and go over there. I'd save up my money. I'd save up $50 over like however long, and then I would go out there and I'd buy mostly Alba boards. I was just so hyped on Alba boards and dreadlocks. But the scene for me was there was a bunch of kids. There was kids that started a crew in the neighborhood. They called it the AMQA posse, death squad, and it was AMQA was Apple Maggot Quarantine Area. And I don't know if you there used to be these signs on the freeways. You'd have to dump out all your produce in Washington State.
Apple Maggot Quarantine Area.
And so they had this posse called the AMQA.
That's so Washington hash.
Yeah.
Did you ever get dreadlocks?
No, I could never do that. I think I tried a couple times. I definitely couldn't do it now. There were times when I wanted to. I had a mullet though, that's for sure. I had the Tony Hawk McSqueed, like the long in the front, short in the back. I had that going like down below my chin.
Is this like late 80s, mid 80s, late 80s? What time are we talking?
Yeah, this mid-late 80s for sure. I could hardly kick turn or anything like that, but when he had something happen with his family and he got rid of his ramp. He was getting rid of his ramp, and somehow or another my mom bought it from him and they just dropped it off. And so I ended up with Ben Beebe's ramp in my front yard. That's how I learned how to mini ramp back in the day. So there wasn't a bunch of spots, like street spots, where I couldn't get to. There was downtown Bellevue, which ended up being my playground for a while before I started going out to Seattle all the time. But yeah, I just skate that ramp, ride to Kirkland downtown at the ball field was like a hot spot, like all kinds of degenerates. So we just get in trouble there. And then ride the 924 metro from where I lived over. Like we'd go to Bell Lanes with the transit center in Bellevue, and then there was a bowling alley, and we'd skate all those spots. Me and Yip and Zach and a bunch of heads we had there. Like they rode for Bike Factory was like the shop to ride for on the east side.
Was it a skate shop or a bike shop or bike shop
It
with
was
skate shop?
both.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. I think he primarily was owned by Bob Barcy, who's passed since, and I think he was. I think he was a hell of a lot more interested in bikes, but he got on board with skateboarding. They had the team though. They had these guys like legends in Seattle street skating back in the day. Yip Tap for sure was probably the biggest, but I think Tyler Faber rode for him. Dave Johns, like this crew, just all these heads from that side. And then we discovered we just go skate U District all the time. Red Square for sure, running from the cops, and all over around there. Downtown Westlake was later. Later for me, anyways, like Gucci Block and stuff like that.
When you got that mini ramp, did the party come with it? Was it like, oh, the ramp's over here now, and the whole scene just like fucking
No,
no?
no. I think by that time those guys had graduated. That time, like Rankwit's ramp, Mike Rankwit, that was the other East Side guy. Yeah, I was talking to the other day. He lived on, it's like Newport Hills, I guess. It's kind of the very south end of Bellevue out, and it's real wooded areas, and it was called the Nature Ramp or just Rankwit's ramp. And Mike was a pro snowboarder. I guess he still is. I don't know. But he was a real good vert skater, pool skater too. He still rides. And all those guys, that was the older guys. They had a crew called Monglor, and it was Monglor 333, and that was their call sign or whatever you want to say.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
always
yeah.
wanted to be a part of that crew. It was let's see, Wes, and so we'd go out and watch him skate vert, but I couldn't skate vert. We wouldn't even go up on the deck. We were just a bunch of street skater kids, and it was a crazy big ramp. But I'd watch, and there would be like Smiley was out there, and we'd just go watch those guys. And if they would let us hang out, we would hang out and just watch. They built a mini across the flat deck, so it was kind of a cross, like an X, and we would skate that when they'd stop. We'd skate that for a while, we'd pump the vert, but yeah, it was one of those things where if you didn't get up on the deck unless you could drop in, you know what I mean? So we spent a lot of time on the flat bottom just watching.
Like, did you ever have like harsh vibes and stuff like that, or was it
Oh
like
yeah,
yeah, it was pretty outcast type of scenario?
yeah. Being a skateboarder was not a popular thing, and I remember it in high school, or jocks would drive by and they'd throw shit at you, or they'd run at you, or they'd always yell "skate or die" out the window, like fuck off, whatever.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
was kind of funny. But yeah, it was not a popular thing. It was looked down upon by the cops, by the jocks, by everybody,
yeah,
uh, by parents. Like if your girlfriend's parents found out you rode skateboards, like they didn't want you around anymore. You know what I mean?
yeah. I mean, that was totally my experience around here, like in the Northeast in like the '90s and stuff like that. But when I went to California, it just felt way different to me. It felt like everyone grew up like skating, and granted, it's like so much later down the timeline, but it just seemed like everyone in California, like their background was skating. I mean, I was living in Santa Cruz, so it's like that's the way it was. It's like Little League, like everyone
Yeah.
skates. And then like in Seattle, Seattle's become such a renowned skate town over the
Yeah.
past 10, 20, 30 years, whatever it is, that it's like skating there is super accepted now too, where it's like I was tripping because when I first moved to Seattle, it's like you're skating down the street and people hear you coming and they like get away, they like get out of your way, you know?
Yeah.
Like in Boston, they will fucking put their arm out and try to clothesline you and be like, I got one, you know what I mean? It was like just totally different fucking scenario. So,
I mean, the way that how Seattle is big with skateboarding, and I I mean, I look back and I know that there was a lot of people, but Marshall Reed has done more for skateboarding. That guy built the scene. He made it acceptable. He put on like Sound and the Fury events. He started companies. He started filming and hyping up. I mean, before Marshall and especially like STP and Manic and stuff like that, like people had no idea, you know, and he was hyping up kids from Alaska and stuff like that. I mean, the guys in California, and it was also right around the time when video started becoming way more accessible. You know, it wasn't just when I was young. I remember and riding for companies or shops and stuff like that. You didn't see anything that wasn't in the magazines, and that was, you know, aside from contests, it was pretty much, you know, you had to be in San Francisco or San Diego, basically. You know, it was like Trans World or Thrasher, and that's the people you saw, was the people who were down there. And if you want to get big in skateboarding, that's you move down there.
Yeah.
And then with video, but man, Marshall put out videos. He knew people in the industry, and he built, you know, like I said, there's a lot of people, but there's nobody more important than Marshall
Yeah.
when it comes to building up Seattle skateboarding. And not only that, but he maintains and he keeps it skateboarding. You know, it's not just commercialized. It's not, you know, it's not watered down, but he also works a lot with the community. You know, he does youth employment. He does so much beyond, you know, all that stuff with, you know, he doesn't run skate like
he's like a true proper liaison. Like he's, you know,
absolutely.
yeah. And dude, he's also like he's OG Seattle, but is like the whole time that I was there, everybody knows Marshall and he's friends with everybody and he knows everybody and he does all the shit, and it's like, so he's still going and going and going, and it's just like, yeah, from the OG till like, it's not like one of those things where it's like, oh, that's the OG from back in the day. It's like, no. He's still
doing
now and in the future is still that dude, you know?
He's just got way more energy, way more creativity. Yeah, he hyped up like every kid that's pro from Seattle right now or from this state. They owe Marshall a debt, because nobody knew. Nobody even knew really about Seattle. There was dudes before him for sure. There was Dieter, Gallardo, and you know, a ton of other dudes from Seattle
Tom
that
Pia.
kind of made it. Pia for sure, but Pia's he's like a legend, a myth. You know, Pia for sure, right?
Yeah.
He's another one that's done a lot for skateboarding in the area, but he's a lot more sort of behind the scenes. And Marshall's just out there, you know.
True that. Yeah.
He gets a lot of energy from his dad. Was the same way with art and everything else. His dad is still doing it too, right? And he just has that same energy that his dad did. He's like, just gonna make it happen. Larry Reed is a legend in the art scene for sure, with music and art and everything else as well.
If you never had kids and you were just skating, maybe you would have fucking petered out. Maybe you need those distractions to like preserve your body, but then also keep the stoke so that when you come back to it, you're just like, you know?
Yeah, definitely. It is hard. Although I'll just say I could skate all day in my 20s, and I would feel the same as like skating an hour in my 40s. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think it's just, there's a lot to be said for age, but yeah, I need those breaks now. I'm definitely slowed down, but you know, in my 20s too, I was riding for companies. I was doing it. I was managing the shop and was like in the scene. It was just something I did all the time, and I was doing it to like constantly get better. And it wasn't a job ever by any means, but I was doing it. You know, I felt like I had to progress all the time. And there's something now, you know, for a long time now, where I just do it for fun. You know what I mean? It's not that it wasn't fun before.
Yeah.
By any means. I mean, I always had fun, or I wouldn't have been doing it, but there's that pressure off, you know what I mean? Like I'm not going pro.
Yeah.
I'm not going pro. I just go out and have fun, and I get stoked on seeing younger kids. I get stoked on the scene. I get stoked on, communities building parks and kids doing stuff. We never had parks when I was younger, so a place for kids to go do something and not get mixed up. I mean, there's a lot of distractions now. There's way more distractions now for kids, I feel like, than there were before. All kinds of things they could get mixed up in. And there's a lot of kids out there that just aren't going to join the football team or whatever, that need something to do. And I'm glad that we have skate parks, you know what I mean, for kids to be active. They're not home eating Cheetos and playing video games all day, and they're not out there, slamming dope or something. For the most part, if they're at the skateboard park, they're doing something healthy.
True
And
that.
they're a part of a community, people that look after them. You got older guys that look after them and sort of keep them straight. We teach respect. We teach clean up the park, do it yourself, build stuff. I mean, people get hooked up with jobs and life skills. It's a scene where there's a lot of kids that are probably on the edge, fringe kids. They're not mainstream.
Yeah.
They're not valedictorians, but they have a place to go and be a part of it. We're all misfits, I think, skateboarders for the most part. There's not a
Yeah.
unless you're training for the Olympics.
Well, it's crazy too, because like nowadays, like you said, there's so much, like, it's got to be really confusing nowadays to be a young kid. Like, there's so many different avenues and multitudes of possibilities, and yeah, you could get into so many scenes, or like there's no, like, I don't know, it was like almost more limited when we were younger. So it was like, society's telling you that one thing is cool, so this is the thing that's not cool, so you kind of go with that. It was like easy to like sort of like choose your path or choose your own adventure. Now there's like fucking 100 options. And I just feel like it's nice. I don't know, I've always felt like in my life it's nice to have skating as this like filter, whereas like it's kind of tribal. You're kind of like,
Yeah.
You're part of this like tribe, and so you're like, your view of the world is almost like, not to sound like, especially now in these like complicated times, but it's like, you're like, I'm like a skater, like that's like my world view, is like I'm coming at it as like a skateboarder. It's kind of how I'm dealing with the world. And so if kids can find that, I think that it helps them to get through nowadays all this shit. Like, yeah, what do I do with my time? Do I sit around and look at like crazy stuff on the internet? Do I hit a vape pen? Do I play Magic the Gathering? Like, I'm a kid. What do I do? There's so many
For sure.
options. Chase Pokemon? I don't know, whatever.
There's so much more media and so much more instant access, right? There's social media where you see all kinds of things, and it's cool, whatever. People can find something they're interested in that they never even knew was a possibility, but I mean, when I was younger, we would just, like you said, part of this tribe, I would just be skateboarding alone, just take a bus into a city and start skateboarding around, and a couple other people would show up that I'd never met and just be like, hey, let's skate. And then, we'd be friends, or we'd see each other, we'd exchange numbers, and then that became our crew. Or I'd just meet up with my friends wherever, and we would go 14, 16 hours. I mean, I'd just go like first thing in the morning sometimes and just go out, and I'd get home whenever. I didn't really have parents looking over me, so
It sounds, but that still happens though. That still happens, That sounds like life now. It's just like you meet people at the skate park and you're like, oh yeah, fucking follow me on Instagram. And and then you see it the next weekend in fucking Maine,
Yep.
Um,
We still have that same thing. I mean, that's how I met everybody from, the Amesbury Park and other places. Just show up. I mean, skateboarders can constantly, wherever you are, you can tell who's a real skateboarder, who's not, so you spot somebody.
you had a Midnight Ice Cream shirt on, and I was like, boom, Seattle, and that was how I started, talking to you and shit. What do you think? The game that the dudes do at the skate park? It's like the wooden can. What's your take on that?
Check it out. I think this thing.
Oh, you got one? No way.
That's my daughter's. My daughters have one.
So Yeah, what's the scoop?
I'm into yo-yos. I don't know what it's called.
Uh
I
huh.
mean, my girls like it. I don't know. They got it. It's cool. Whatever. I
You're
don't.
into yo-yos?
I'm kind of into yo-yos.
Like,
Yeah,
can you do the tricks and stuff like that?
I can do a few.
Right
Yeah,
on. Hell yeah.
something to kill time with. Yeah, this thing. You know what? I don't even. As long as it's not harmful to yourself or others, I really don't care. If people are into stuff, man, like if you're into the accordion, cool, man. You might be like Matt Hensley playing in a flogging malt, whatever. Like
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you want
yeah.
to get into something weird and do it, like I'm cool with that.
I had just never heard of it before until I kind of arrived hanging around at Amesbury Skate Park, and now it's like I see this shit, and it's like Matt, the dude, Matt has like a scene where there's like they have contests and
Oh
I
yeah,
believe maybe even videos with like angles and shit,
like trick shots and stuff.
Yeah, like
Whatever, man. It's the only thing I ever hated on really was rollerblading.
yeah,
Anything else, and you know how I feel about scooters, but they're for
yeah,
little kids. But
yeah.
that's cool. I don't
Well,
know.
I was at Newburyport Skate Park today. It's back open again, praise be. But I was there today with Arthur, and this fucking kid came flying out of the bowl with a scooter, and it just, he had no intention of landing whatever it was. I mean, he wasn't like a even a preteen, like trying to be like, oh, I'm gonna fucking get sick on the scooter. He was just like a little kid, and he was just
Yeah,
flinging the scooter into the air, like from out of the transition, and it
it's
was,
dangerous.
dude, super dangerous, and also going up and landing on like that like flat part where those like two there's like kind of that roll in pad where everyone stands off before they like roll in.
Yeah, yeah,
And me and Arthur were just like, hey, dude, don't fucking do that. Like, you're gonna either like wreck the concrete or like someone's head. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like, so yeah, that's like, I try not to. I used to be really like a fucking hater. Like, I hated rollerbladers in the 90s. And when the scooter thing came around, I was like, fuck scooters. But then I got to the point where I was like, you know what, dude? These little kids, if they want to enjoy this fucking space, it's basically a playground. Who am I to say what they fucking do? As long as they don't fucking, write graffiti and leave their trash and shit, I don't really
Yeah.
give a fuck. And I don't even really care about the graffiti, but in Seattle, the city would come through and sandblast it and it would like fuck up the bowls. But
Yeah.
yeah, anyways, the thing about the scooter thing is, though, not to be a hater on it, like not to be a hater of little kids, but the way that they whip the handlebars and shit,
Dangerous.
it's fucking sketchy. If I'm standing there talking to you and there's this thing that's winging by like a helicopter blade, it freaks me out, you know?
There's nothing more dangerous at a skate park than like a 6-year-old on a BMX bike too. It's the same kind of the same thing. I think about those the same way as
Or a
this
26
kid.
year old. Fuck it, dude.
Yeah, whatever. I mean, but they can't control it. It's this big ass thing. You're on a skateboard, and they have this, whatever, 20 pounds. I don't even know, but they just jam into you. They bail. The thing goes flying. Like, or I mean, you know how those guys are marginal, right? You hold that down. Like the thing that bums me out a lot about rollerblades were the same way, right? And scooters mostly, like I said, little kids, they want to ride scooters, cool. Um, but we used to have to
It's not
fight.
cool, though. It's whack, but I know what you're
Yeah,
saying. But go on.
but we used to have to fight. In Seattle, like back in the day, we'd have to fight for years to get skateboard parks built, or like in the case of Burnside, like you just fucking build it yourself, right?
Yeah.
And we'd spend all this hard work we'd go to city council meetings, we'd parks and rec departments, or buying your own bags or whatever, and pouring shit, and then all of a sudden when it's built, all of a sudden you'd have rollerbladers and BMX dudes showing up, and you got BMX guys with pegs that would fucking ruin the coping and the decks and everything else, but they weren't there at the city council meetings, and they weren't there with bags and trowels or
Yeah.
anything else. They just showed up when it was done. Rollerbladers the same way.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't care. It's like, you want to do your thing, but don't come here and just ride off and then be disrespectful. You know, like I don't know, just it's kind of kooks. It was just that's a sore spot for me. I'm got over it. I mean, rollerblading's dead. I think that's been pretty much proven. Now we
Yeah.
just have scooters are the new rollerblades. But
To be totally honest with you, man, like I tolerate scooters just because they're like you said, for the most part, little kids. Rollerbladers, like I haven't really seen some. I mean, I see people that ride roller skates, and I think that's sick. Like I saw this chick go air to fakie at the Clover
yeah,
Bowl on roller skates. Like to land going
yeah,
fakie on roller skates is pretty wild, if you ask me. But no, like the BMX thing, like I support them spiritually and like aesthetically. They're very similar to skateboarders. Like they seem to
yeah.
like dress similar and kind of like hang out the same, and like they're similar. Like BMXers are like the same, but there's just like something about being around. Like when BMXers are on the session, I just get bummed out more, almost more so than scooters. Like I just kind of want to dip. Like aesthetically, like as like a purist, like I don't like the way bikes look like that. Like I don't know. I just I don't know. I don't like it. It's nothing personal. It's just
I
like
mean, my thing has always been, and I know dudes that ride BMXs and back in
same.
the day, but don't go to a park that was built by skateboarders and ruin the fucking coping or ruin the deck or throw your shit around or you know talk shit whatever. It's just be respectful. If you build your own stuff, I mean, Rye is built by those dudes. Like there's a whole BMX section. The guys ride like that's their you know there's much built by them and scooters help support it and stuff like that. If you go there, it's going to annoy me, but I don't get pissed. But it's not the same as when dudes show up in the middle of the night at Marginal Way and fucking riding with pegs and blowing out the coping and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Don't
fuck
don't
that.
ruin something that you didn't build. You know,
Yeah.
and that's how I felt for the longest time because I was involved in getting a few skateboard parks built back in the Seattle area, and you know the rollerbladers, none of those guys were there. They weren't putting in the work to get it done. Um, like I said, they just showed up when it was built. You know,
Yeah.
they were there for the ribbon cutting.
Which if you know, you could say the same for a percentage of like skaters, and like to be honest with you, man, like I'm not like a builder like that, so it's like I've ridden marginal, but I've never like I'm not one of those core dudes that's like built it, you know what I mean? But I think maybe the difference is like just kind of like how if you're a skater, it's most skaters kind of know how to handle themselves, like you said, like pick up your trash and like don't snake people and just like fucking just like be cool.
No diving boards on the coping.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you have any hardcore like old school pet peeves like that, like skating wise, like as far as like skate park etiquette, or like what's your number one thing, or what's anything that comes to mind like that?
I mean, my motto is just don't be a kook and do whatever's bothering me at the time, right?
Yeah.
Like throwing shit around. We don't really do the things we used to do to keep people in check anymore. but um, but yeah, it's I mean, just don't blow it, man. Don't come there with uh, beer out in the open or, smoking a joint in front of a cop or throwing your shit everywhere, trash everywhere, or yelling and screaming and cursing at little kids or parents. I mean, you got to appreciate what you have. We're always like, it's always tenuous, right? It would take one dumb move by some idiot skateboarder, or maybe not even a dude. It could just be some kook who wants to hang out around skateboarders. One fucking kook could have that whole park shut down. If the right parent sees it, it was like, I can't, yelling at kids or punch a little kid or fucking smoke whatever. You can do one dumb thing and the whole spot's gone.
One dumb thing.
And that's what bothers me more than anything else. I mean, yeah, hanging your hang your board over the coping on a ramp or a park. Like I'll pick up kids' boards and throw them over the fence. I mean, maybe not anymore,
Yeah.
but that's just learning the ropes, or not looking where you're going, and snaking. Like you got a rhythm. But I used to run skate camps for kids, and I would just teach them like you take runs, right? You don't just drop in every time. You don't just go back up the top and drop in. You look around. You see who's gone, and look where you're going. Look where other people are going. Watch, be aware,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing, and just keep with the rhythm.
Dude,
Keep with the rhythm of what's going on.
I went to this Black Lives Matter rally at Nashua skate park last night, and
Yeah.
it was. Have you been to Nashua?
No, I haven't. I've seen it. I haven't been. Like I said, I don't travel very far.
So
I haven't, I haven't been to a lot of places.
it's basically just this gigantic like bowlscape. It's like a big open bowl format with all these features everywhere. And yeah, it's big enough to where I suppose 5, 6, 7 people could skate it at one time. But it's like, some people like sometimes like when I like roll in, like I don't know what the next wall I'm going to is necessarily. You're just kind of like wing. You know how skating is. And
Yeah.
so last night, I mean, it was fucking pandemonium. There was probably 100 people there, and you had BMXers, scooters, fucking a traffic line,
Smash up derby.
everyone doing flyouts. Yeah, there was just all these people everywhere, and it was like, I kept saying to people, they're like, it's crazy, right? And I'm like, yeah, dude, it's like street skating in fucking Manhattan, but you're in a bowl. Like you're
Yeah.
just like, oh, power slide, here comes someone around the corner, like fucking. It was crazy, dude. Like just chaos. But I kind of like it. I kind of like dig that. It's like one of the things I really like. I like that, like skating in New York City or skating in San Francisco or like really compact, hectic places. Or I don't know if are you into like skiing or snowboarding at all?
Yeah, I've done both. I was into snowboarding mostly in my teens and 20s and early, and I think I'd probably go back to skiing now. I
Like
did
going
ski.
through the glades.
Yep,
Like the
yep.
tight, that's kind of like, I don't know. I like that shit.
I like the energy. I definitely like back in the day when I was younger and I had I wasn't so worried about getting hurt or whatever.
Yeah.
I love it, but I love a scene like that, like a big crowd, people skating, like just tons of energy and people just are pushing themselves.
Yeah. No, you
And you
would have
just
dug
feed
it.
off that energy. Like it's like a crowd at a punk show or something, like just jamming,
Yeah.
shoulder to shoulder. That's fun. Yeah.
Yeah. That's fun too. Where you ever do this thing at the skate park where it's like you just kind of like, it's not like you're not snaking each other, right? It's just like we used to do this. Like I used to skate at that park in Northgate quite a bit, like by the Target, the fucking mall there they built.
Yep.
And we used to like skate and like, it's cool. Everyone's taking their turns and everything. But then every once in a while we just go, okay, now everyone go psycho. And what that means is just like you're not snaking each other, but everyone's skating at the same time and everyone's shredding. So you're like looking out for the other people and stuff, but you're all just skating and shredding. It's like there's no like runs. You're just, it's like, it's a frenzy. It's like, it's a shark. You know, Arthur today called
Smash up,
it feeding.
mash up derby.
Yeah, well,
Totally
hopefully
see.
not. But Nashua was sick because it has lights and stuff. So it was like by the time I got there, the session was hot. I skated from like 8 to 10, and it was like I said, people were just gnashing all around. It was sick.
Yeah, a bunch of guys have told me I have to get up there. Like I mean, explain. I grew up. There were no parks. It was kind of the end of the big park era. There was nothing. I think there was something in Olympia maybe, but we were just in the streets. There was vert ramps and we skated mini ramps for sure, but those were few and far between too.
Yeah,
It was just like we were in the streets, and so I still I have fun on transition, and I like riding concrete as well. But my heart will always be like find a block, a ledge, like,
Yeah.
good pyramid stuff like that. Um, I mean, that's my jam, and so I'll definitely have fun. I'm happy. The pavement could be better, but I'm happy at Amesbury, just
Yeah.
roll, just riding. Definitely, it could use work. It could be easier on the legs for sure, and things like that. But I mean, just simple stuff for me, like a ledge, manual pad, some curbs. Like I'm good. Little things here and there. But I want to make it up there. I mean, I have fun at Rye when I skate there.
Yeah.
I had fun when I went up to Red Alert, and I did. My buddy Brian came out, and we went up to. I think I told you went out to Turner's Falls just because I heard it was a grind line.
Oh,
So
yeah, yeah,
Montague,
yeah,
Turner's Falls. I had
yeah.
fun out there.
And
Yeah,
South Hadley, I think, is not far from there, and there's a park there too. South Hadley, if I'm not
we just
mistaken.
drove out there, skated for it was like 100 fucking degrees with that East Coast humidity that day, and we
Yeah.
just skated for a couple hours. Met the locals. There was a shop out there for a minute called Playground,
Yep.
and met some people. It was cool,
Sick,
and
man.
then we just headed back. Yeah, we skated. I mean, Newburyport's fun too. That's a fun spot.
Yeah.
Like I don't need too much. Like I said, I'm not trying to be a skate park hero or anything like that. I just like to have fun and hang out with people. I can skate alone, but I like 2, 3, 5, 10 people, whatever. If it gets too crazy these days, I'll just chill and watch or take a few lines here and there.
Yep. I think at the end of the day, what it boils down to for me is like adventure. Like, I definitely went through a phase where, like, I was definitely like, yo, I'm gonna ride everything in fucking King County that's a municipal skate park. I was like, I'm going to. And
Yeah,
then it became this obsession, dude. And then I was like, okay, now California. And it was like, I just I got crazy with it, but I was tripping out on it the other day. How it was like, honestly, like, oh, it was after the rally, and we were leaving. My friend Jeff and I were leaving the fucking like the main part, and we are going back to the car. We ended up skating this little curb, this like 3-stair curb thing, and it was like, dude, you could just have more fun with this one. Like, just back in the day, like, sure, all these skate parks are rad, and I love driving, all over the fucking hell's creation to skate all these amazing parks that are like hand troweled perfection and everything. It's amazing, but at the same time, you could just trip out on a parking block for fucking 4 hours and just one little fucking 6 foot by 3 foot little parking space, and just have the most fun by just your own creativity and whatever you want to do.
yeah,
It's pretty
yeah. I
crazy.
mean, we would skate at some of the funnest times. Thinking about like Red Square, there's a few things that we could just skate there for months, like every day, all the time. Or there was this underground over in Bellevue, just off I-90, called Kane. It was like Kane's Motel, and there was a little business park right next to it. It was underground, covered. You could skate it. It was lit, all hours of the day, night, weekends when it was raining, everything. And there was a few curbs, and there was just a long block. It was like curb high, and then a manual pad. It was like lifted up where you would take one step up, and then you would go into the door, of the office building down below. And we just waxed up, and you could do probably it was like manual pad. You could do like 20-foot long manuals, all sorts of slappy curb tricks, and we would just skate this basically like curb high sidewalk section, and we just skate for hours, like all the time. Um, Same thing. Did you ever go? You ever hear of the Bullfrog Banks
I don't think
over on the
so.
east side?
No.
There was this spot. It was all built on the swamp right next to the Mercer Slough, and so there's this office park that's built up on posts and like pillars, like that are down into the ground, and they built a parking lot that's all asphalt. And they have the same thing. It's probably curb high, like cement pads that are attached to the building and the door. But what would happen is over the years, the parking lot would actually sink down because it was swampland. And so the curbs would get higher and higher. And then one time, I don't even
The
remember it.
curbs got higher and higher.
The curbs got higher and higher because the ground kept sinking down and the cement was, would stay at the same height. And eventually what they did is they asphalted it. They just blacktopped up. So it was like curb high and then like a foot high asphalt bank, like around these things. And we just called it the bullfrog banks because it was right next to the slough and there was all these bullfrogs croaking all the time.
Yeah.
But we would just skate that spot. Like there was 2 or 3 of these places where there were doors and there were these banks built up to like curb high, like cement pads, and just skate those all day. That was the spot. Some crazy times. It's just, all cops would almost never roll through. There was like no security. Just skate there. It became a bust after a while, but that was a good spot. But it was just simple, it was like a bank to a curb.
Yeah.
Just skate that all day, every day. Whatever you want to do.
Yeah, man. Some of the best times. Is funny as like when I was a kid, that's all that there was in Newburyport was really just curb cuts, really maybe a gap here and there, a 3 set,
Yeah.
And then like, going out to Seattle and having that whole little like freak out seeking all these skate parks and trying to ride all these round walls and shit, like that was cool. But then, like, I met these dudes, like, and, like, we just fucking hung out across the street from the Tin Hat and, like, skated that on the collision auto body curb on 65th there and, like, the collision curb club or whatever. Yeah, and that's just, like, when you were talking about that, I was thinking about those sessions with those friends where it's just like, dude, I mean, honestly, the curb, depending on how you would want to look at it, it either sucks or it's rad because it's like right up against this wall. So if you're going front side, you're like on this wall. And, it's not the most like, there's no features there. It's just like a curb up against a wall, but it's covered. So you can skate there in the pouring rain sometimes,
Yeah.
And
good covered spot in Seattle.
Yeah, and it's across the street from the bar, and you could, obviously, if the only thing about the place that was like ever kind of shitty was sometimes people would drop off their car there to get it done, like the work done. So it'd be like a bust, like there'd be like just a random car. It'd be like, all right, it's the weekend, we're all like, let's get a 6-pack and go to the curb, and then like there's a car there,
Yeah.
But I don't know. Those were just such, in the middle of that city where all these rad grindline parks are and everything, just to skate that curb was some of the best times ever,
Yeah, you get a group of friends or whatever, like people you've seen, and you got a spot. That's all you need. That's skateboarding you can do just about anywhere. All you need is like a little bit of cement and a skateboard. Right?
Yeah.
That's it. You build your own stuff like wherever you are, and you might be, come out incredible or just have fun with friends or build a scene. I mean, that's all you really need. It's killer that we have all these parks. I'm glad. You look at most of the parks that I see in Massachusetts that were built. They're built by some fucking landscaping company or something like that. Like they went into a council meeting or they responded to some request for proposals, and they were like, yeah, I'll have a skate park in 2 days or some shit like that, and they weren't skateboarders, they had no idea. They were just looking to make a quick buck.
Yeah.
They saw pictures in a magazine and they just threw some shit down.
I mean, grindline and like that's like some proper shit. Like those dudes that build Burnside and then like went on to be like the standard like for like skate park building in the world. I mean, you got Team Pain and shit. You know what I'm saying? That's like that dude's like OG as fuck, and I consider like Florida and Colorado like to be on par with like the Pacific Northwest as far as like, and I definitely attribute that to Team Pain. And honestly, I feel like even Artisan like around here is like on a similar vein of putting out really killer quality parks,